How's everybody feeling today? Well, I say feeling because of the fact that we are actually in a time where we're becoming really hypersensitive. Hypersensitive. And ultimately, we need to know that that's because we're tuning into the greater universe. We're tuning into the understanding that this is just a placeholder for us in this body. That's all it is, a placeholder for our body. But our bodies reflect everything that we're feeling. And the problem I have with a lot of very wonderful spiritual people is that they know how to take things in, but they don't know how to let them go. And so the person who is so sensitive is trying to heal people who don't necessarily want to be healed. So there's a suggestion from Spirit, kind of twofold, is one, to set yourself a ceremony that before you go into your home, before you go into your place of refuge, that you do a clearing for yourself. That you recognize that sometimes we pick up things that we don't even know we did. How many of you have walked into a room, somebody had a headache in that room, and you walked away with it? How many, because the fact that on subconscious level, we raise ourselves to think that we know what's best for somebody else. And sometimes those dis-eases are there to teach them a lesson. I'll be 74 next month. And in all those years that I've worked with Spirit, listened to them, paid attention to things that they were saying, or demonstrated for me things that I needed to learn. And just like everybody else, some of those things I went in kicking and screaming. Because there was no way I really wanted to do that. But I had to learn that when I take a dis-ease from somebody else and hold on to it, I just gave that back to them tenfold. It's a fact that people love when you say, if I give love, I get it back tenfold. But do you know that when you give love, you'll get it back in the exact manner that you gave it? Spirit works a lot with me with vibration and energy. And thinking back in my time coming into this world, I've seen everything as energy. And it isn't what comes out of somebody's mouth, it's when you see the energy of their heart. And right now, there are so many people living in fear of what's next. And they've lost faith that there is a higher order, a higher reality. Shakespeare said, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. So people who think they're in charge, it's kind of a joke on the other side. But we have to be the instruments that allow that energy to come down into this world. Because they need physical people who are in a physical position to be the conduit of that energy. To send that energy into the physical world. So how do we balance between touching in and trying to be so sensitive to everything around you and knowing what energy you're carrying around you with this world? I have two prayers I use every day, and I use these every day. The first one is to be physically awake, physically aware to the highest level I am capable of at this time. The things I was aware of and the things that I understood when I was 10 isn't what I understand now. So we are learning and we are growing. But the most important part of that learning and growing is the only one you need to answer to is God itself. The divine oneness of the universe, the intelligence that rules over this world. That's all you have to answer to. And my problem there is people try to prove they're good enough. Good enough. Good enough for whom? Tell me something. If you were out at a restaurant or a mall and somebody said to their child, get down on your knees and worship me, wouldn't we be offended? Wouldn't we feel that was a horrible thing to do to that child? And yet, that's what they keep telling us God wants from us. As a parent, everybody can imagine that if they had a child, they want them to grow self-reliant, independent, find something they truly love to do, and God gets to share in that. Your personal relationship with your God, the God of your understanding, and many people see God in many, many ways. But I know that my heart tells me that God loves us beyond measure. God set up a world, and believe me, I do not believe in demons and I do not believe in devils. I believe humanity made that up to explain bad things. And thus the blame game got initiated. So that ultimately, knowing where you are, knowing your connection, knowing your understanding, is the fact is that your bodies were created, but your soul was given birth to. So how does that translate back into our sensitivity and the fact that our antennas are always up? So that's a good visual, that you bring your antennas down because you don't want to know other people's business. I always love when people walk up and say, what are you getting? I say nothing because I'm minding my own business. But we have to recognize there's a shift that we can make in that energy. Creating a symbol for ourselves that is a clearing symbol. Asking the angelic force to transmute that energy into something positive. I like to use this oftentimes because 9/11, before that happened, months before that happened, I was being given visions. I couldn't go to sleep without getting pictures and images. In my half wake, half sleep, I literally kept getting more. And it was getting to the point because I couldn't put my finger on where it was coming from. I didn't know what it was attached to. When you see planes blowing up and you see buildings falling down, it's a scary thing. Now, I have angels that I work with, and they're not the ones that say, you poor thing, sorry you're feeling that way. They walk in and say, knock it off. They told me that they didn't need my fears being placed into that. They needed me to say prayers. And they told me that they can't do a thing with negative energy. But when you feed them positive energy, they said, even if we can't stop something, we can lessen it. But you have to think how powerful that makes us. Do you know they can actually measure on a scale when the universe, this planet, is in an emotional state? They actually can record the frequency of our emotions. And the irony is, in the tests that they've done, that we actually react up to 6 seconds before we're presented with something. That our behavior, our emotions will register. They did an experiment where they took and showed pictures, random pictures. Some were happy and some were devastating. And what they found is the average person, not the ones that were really good at it, but the average, was 6 seconds that we responded before we saw the picture. Kind of interesting, isn't it? You know, the Bible tells us that we were given dominion over all things. I keep telling people to remember, you're not God. You might be working on it, but you aren't there yet. But you got eternity to figure everything out. But sacrificing yourself on the altar of love is just as bad as not being able to love at all. I believe this world was designed as simplistic as an atom. In order for that atom to exist, it requires an equal amount of negative as it has the positive. You can't have one without the other. That's science. So that means that every one of us sit in a place where there is a negative aspect to something and a positive. It's up to us to find our balance, not to give it away so somebody else won't be in pain. Not to give it away because they have to recognize they have the same power you have. How many people have gotten into a car, gone out on the road, and all of a sudden they start seeing that car everywhere? How about you get in a new car, and until you recognize it, every car has a blind spot. And we have to learn it. That's also true in the nature of spiritualism and being a good spirit. Because the one thing you need to get out of your vocabulary is that you should be good enough. Because I find that balance for me is sometimes having a good tantrum for myself. As long as I don't take it out on somebody else. As long as I'm not making somebody else feel less than. Because in order to be a passionate person, you need that energy. And sometimes it just balls up and it's going to blow. Person responsibility says we take responsibility for that. And a lot of people don't like when I say this, but I have witnessed people create their own diseases and pass because of them. I've seen people who've gone to healers, and the thing that was the worst, they had a tumor. One person that I know personally had a tumor. Went for an operation the next day, and the tumor was gone. Now, I would think that if I had somebody who could heal something that traumatic, I would go back, right? No. Because sometimes our dis-ease is an expression that we can't say any other way. It's your body trying to talk to you and saying you're storing crap here. We should just look at it so we can let it go, so we can release it. But you can't do that for somebody else. All you can do is send extra energy and a vision of them as whole and holy. And then they have to do with what they're going to do. If I can't tell you I'm in pain, my body's going to demonstrate it for me. It's the way it is. Do you know that scientifically there's no reason why we should get old? Biblically, people were 1,000 years old, and Methuselah was supposed to have been 3,000 years. In 1900, if you were 40, you'd be an old person. They set the retirement age at 65. Most people said, well, 65, I'll take 5, 10 years, and then I'll go. You don't do this and say to yourself, oh, I think now I will go in 10 more years. But on a subconscious level, on a soul level, we do. If you got to live to be 100 years old in this world, you've been here that long of your soul. That's all. All the things that we think are so traumatic. I have a theory right now, and I've discussed this with my angels, that people are collecting as many terrible stories so they have something to say when they get on the other side. You think that was bad? You think you went through a lot. But the truth is, it doesn't matter what we go through. It has more to do with what did we learn? Did we grow? Did we understand something better? Did we love ourselves through the difficult times? And part of loving yourself when you're sensitive is also knowing when it's not your power to heal them, it's God's. And their conversation with their God. Whatever that understanding is. It's one of the reasons I love this church. And I love spiritualism. Because we get to decide our communication and our connection to God in our own way, in our own understanding. You come to church because you share ideas and you learn more through other people. But that should never supersede your direct connection with the source of all things and the source of good. As the God in me honors the grace of God in you. Thank you.